Welcome to the AMAs, the Alumni Edition, and the alumni are here to answer your queries. I'm glad to have Malay, Kotal, Amba, Gupta, and Anuja here, who are going to talk about their experiences and testimonies.
Yes.
Malay, do you want to go first? Do you want to tell about your experience?
Yes, no problem. Hi everyone, I am Malay Kotal. I was part of the fellowship 18-19 batch. Right now I am working at IIHS Delhi as a research assistant. Before the fellowship, I was doing my master's program at Jawaharlal University. Then I applied for this particular course, to rooted myself in urban context, more nuanced way. So right now I am working with the same as sector, that is the urban, where my focus is land and housing. My ongoing project is talking about the housing challenges, delivery of public houses in Delhi. So it's really amazing to talk about my fellowship experience. Those memories are always front of my thinking. What I have learned during the fellowship. So if I talk about my best memories from 1 year, it's although very difficult to talk about that. But there are a few things that I really want to share with all the friends who are right now listening to us. So first thing, I see the fellowship, is kind of crossroad of ideas, people, practices, where people from different disciplinary background, different experience, different personal trajectories, they come, talk with each other, share their experience, learning, their networks. There are always argument, debates around certain particular topic. But to know or discuss certain things from disciplinary background always, makes us learn something beyond the disciplinary limit. So that is one thing I always cherish during my memories throughout the fellowship. And second thing, the flexibility of the course. Already there are some guide outline already mentioned in the website, but I think there is no kind of standard format or standard hello. Anybody from any background, any disciplinary background as well as personal experience can apply for the fellowship. So what is written as an outline for the fellowship is you will get those things during the classroom discussions, project work, exposure tips. But beyond that, you can, learn so much. That flexibility is there in the fellowship. So you can learn while talking with your batchmates during, outside the classroom. They are from different background, different disciplinary training. So they can help you to know certain things that your training and your disciplinary background may not help you to look at that particular thing. So that is one thing I really enjoy. Sometimes I now feel, my disciplinary background is from geography. But if you go by the history, these disciplinary things evolved, in 19th century. Now we are in a different type of world, different types of problem we are facing. There is a climate change, there is a urban problem, there is a long-standing debate of poverty, marginalization, everything. But this particular fellowship provides that opportunity where you go beyond certain limits. You push yourself. You want to see something beyond your disciplinary boundaries, because problem can't be addressed from a single particular disciplinary background. That is another aspect. Third thing that I really want to talk about, the knowledge sharing, the process of knowledge sharing. We always do not give values to our personal experience and journeys. When you apply for the job experience, they will ask you how many years you have worked in a particular institute. But what about the life experience? that is much real, much nuanced, and much that gives you so much of insights to certain things. Fellowship actually encourage that thing. Your personal journey, personal experience can be, you know, discussed, can be studied. Your personal insights journey can provide you some insights to what the problem you are right now looking at. That is another thing. So these are a few things. I think Anuja and Amba will talk more about their experience. So uh, Amba, you can go ahead, or Anuja, you can talk about now. I'll come back if anything particular questions come.
Amba, do you want to go next, or I'm happy to go too?
Anything. I'll go.
Go for it, Amba. Yeah.
Okay. So, I have a bit of a story of how I landed up in UFP. First of all, I'm Amba. Hi. And I am an architect by discipline. And so I think throughout my architectural education, I was always interested in urban, as a lot of people, architects are. And after working for 2 years in an urban design firm, I was applying for a master's in urban design. But during the process of applications, I had hit a lot of insecurities about what I'm doing and why I'm doing and where I'm going, sort of a scenario. So what would happen was, when I was writing my SOP, somewhere I sort of started feeling from inside that I'm stuck in very generic theories and perspective that my education or even experience sort of gave me. Simplest things like, after beyond a certain acre or hectare, suddenly the project from architecture becomes urban. But that's not true. Urban is not just about scale. It's also like the littlest of intervention, but has a huge impact, which is scalable and which can be, applied elsewhere. And at the same time, when I was reflecting back at my work, I sort of started seeing what I had written as my vision, as my urban vision, but the build form that I made. And suddenly I felt that there are a lot more systems that need to be injected within that build form to actually being able to achieve that vision. And like I said, I started feeling very insecure, and I was like, oh no, I don't have any grounded information about India as well. Indian context is what is bringing out my motivation for urban. And that's the time that I decided to sort of drop the master's for now and sort of bridge it with a fellowship which gives me interdisciplinary education. It tells me what are these systems that I'm talking about, are they being able to integrate or not, or what is the recipe to cracking a certain particular vision or a particular idea that you have. And this is how I came about to UFP. And with UFP, it sort of not only met whatever I intended it for come, it gave me a lot more in terms of the language that we were talking about, in terms of the peers who were coming. And what UFP actually did the greatest for me was able to extract out what my interest has always been. A subject which I had been running away my entire life in my education and in my practice is the subject that I'm actually deeply in love with, because I'm being able to understand why certain things are happening in a certain ways, and also what are the different ways of approaching that subject, which is housing. And I couldn't understand why are we making these vertical housing. I always quote this incident when my real estate developer told me to put up an AC and a washing machine in the affordable housing. I had a sleepless night. And then I was like, okay, there's something going wrong. But what UFP sort of did to me was, give me sort of an analytics of what is the economics behind it. What is land value? What is tenure? What are the different aspects which sort of interject, and also open to different kind of practices that I can engage as an architect as well. So this is just like a brief of why I came to UFP and what I achieved out of it. And I'll cover the nitty-gritties in the coming aspects. Anuja, do you want to go ahead?
Some problem might be Anuja's end.
I think Anuja might be facing some technical glitch.
Okay.
So meanwhile, this was very interesting, guys, to understand your background and how it's like navigated your trajectory, especially from geography, and then you're into policies, and then as an architect, you were exploring the urban at a much scalar level, right? So would you like to sort of elaborate on how UFP's journey sort of helped you navigate where you are today? Like you've spoken about in the testimony in the aspect. I'm asking as to what about the program sort of helped you overleap your trajectory today?
Yeah, Amba, you can go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think first, basically, the UFP structure is really nice because, like I was saying, I really wanted to learn about the grounded theories of the urban, of different subjects of the urban, whether it's economics, planning, identity, ecology, you know. So what for me, what happened was first there was like a huge expansion of knowledge, understanding everything from different perspectives, and then via practica, via actually action tasks that we did of research, of going on the ground, then ending up in electives, it sort of narrowed down my interest and particularly specializing in what I wanted to do. So within that, like I said, practica became a very important element because whatever you were studying was actually getting implemented, not just because, oh, you have a research project and you say this aspect I'm studying, but because you have people around you, your peers who are coming from different background, making you forcibly think about, their perspective and where they are coming from. And while you may have fights, you may have debates about, but it's not that you are looking at a subject from, you just cover an aspect of it, that you say, okay, I'm covering social, but someone is making you think about the deep rooted systemic social elements which are present. And that's how it sort of gets on through the way of, a theoretical, grounded theoretical approach. You are implementing that on the ground. So that was a key aspect of my entire journey. And few subjects that I would personally want to talk about was like, as an architect, I was never trained to look at identity. While we would conceptually sort of, use the words or just put it as concept notes on our sheets, it was not something that we completely understood. So the subject of identity was very new to me. And the way it beautifully took course in UFP was something which genuinely transformed something inside me. So while we were studying frameworks of identity, while we were studying what are the systemic inequalities and what are the markers of inequalities, at the same time, the beauty of it is that the cohort is coming from a diverse background. So you see how those deep-rooted institutionalized marginalization is executed on ground, because every day you are talking about struggles of different people coming from different backgrounds. And what it changes inside you is not just that, oh, policy may change chahiye, yeah, we need to do things differently. But somewhere it also makes a personal, it did a personal change to me in terms of how am I communicating? What are my behavioral patterns? What is my positionality? So there are a few aspects which sort of held on to me during UFP, and the broader structure of the program really helped me to genuinely transition into an urban practitioner, if I am, and I can call myself that proudly.
Great. I think, should I talk about, then Anuja will talk about her experience.
Let Anuja speak. She had some technical glitch. Hi, Anuja.
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Can you all hear me now?
Yeah, some.
Okay, awesome. Hi friends, I am Anuja. I am an urban fellow from the 2018-2019 batch. my prior experience before the fellowship, I studied economics at St. Xavier's, then decided I wanted to always do public services, wanted to do something for the society. But then got a corporate job through campus placements, and I thought, hey, why not, right? So picked up the job. It was in the for-profit business consulting space. Always had this feeling of want to do something different, but maybe after earning and after saving a little bit more, and never really got the way out. And then I landed up on the fellowship. I read about it, found it super interesting, and I thought maybe this fellowship is sort of my ticket to sort of move into the social sector space and to learn a little bit more. In fact, rather than directly diving into a social sector job. So applied to the fellowship, spoke to a couple of fellows, saw videos, and with every sort of media I was absorbing about the fellowship, I felt like I want to be here. And this is where I really want to be. And that's how it turned out. And after the fellowship now, I have not really left the practice I was in, like I was in the consulting space before. I am right now also in the consulting space, except a big shift that earlier I was in the business consulting space. So we would sort of advise, like pharmaceutical company, automobile company, and now I advise like non-profits, philanthropists, multilateral organizations, etc. And I'm happy to talk more about like what were my learnings from the fellowship, which I directly and indirectly sort of translate into my everyday work. But just like, I think when I think of the fellowship, I've always lived in Mumbai. So, and because the fellowship is a residential program, that was my first experience of living outside of home, exploring a city with such amazing folks, right? Like we would all live in the same building, travel to college, study there, and like I think some of the best times that I think of about my life, a lot of those experiences are from the fellowship. So I've made amazing friends, I've received amazing mentors, and I'm doing good in life career-wise. So happy to talk about like different aspects of the fellowship as we go ahead in the live.
Yes.
Sorry, I interrupted. Malay, you were saying something, right?
No, I was saying, I want to answer the questions that Subhya asked before you join, like the call. So I think going to that question, I think one thing I really enjoy like post fellowship is my approaches has changed little bit. Before joining, there were so many insecurities. Like I want to be in the academic field. Then there is insecurity. Like okay, like how I will write, because my language was a major problem. Still, this problem I'm grappling with. That is one thing. Then being in a university and reading so much theories, always create binaries in your mind. But when you go to the field, the world is not like binary. The world is not function like a binary thing. So that is another thing, and the first questions came to my mind when I saw this opportunity. Who will fund me? Like if I go to Bangalore, like who give me that funding? All these addressed by this particular program, people who are interested, who wants to do something, who wants to theorize their personal journeys or life or their personal problems into a more academic large scale thing. IIHS actually give that platform, and there is no better way to talk about theory. Actually, people who are engaged with that, there are faculties who has lots of experience about their and their practice and how they build theories throughout their career. You can go beyond and talk with them. Okay, आपने तो ये लिख दिया है पेपर में, इसका पीछे का कहानी बताओ. like that insights, because in every art form there is a certain limitation. So much you can put it in a particular article or books or whatever. It can be drawing, it can be anything. So like that thing always motivates me. अरे आप बताओ, ये तो लिख तो दिए हैं आप, ये कैसे किया आपने, लाइक इसका पीछे का कहानी क्या है, आपने क्या किया था जो आपको ऐसे इसको देखने में हेल्प किया. सेम टाइम द लैंग्वेज ऑल्सो, लाइक जो लोग अभी देख रहे हैं उस साइड पे है कैमरा का, उनको सब हर टाइम लगता है यार मेरा तो लैंग्वेज ठीक नहीं है, फिर मैं कैसे जाके ऐसे कम्पीट कर पाऊंगा लोगों. When you go to the fellowship, you talk with the faculties and your peers group, you realize language एक प्रॉब्लम तो है, बट वो एक सर्टेन एक्सटेंट तक ये अपॉर्चुनिटी भी है. लाइक व्हेन यू थिंक समथिंग फ्रॉम 2 लैंग्वेज और 3 लैंग्वेज वट एवर उसमें क्या हो जाता है, जो चीजें जैसे हिंदी में या मेरा बंगाली में जो चीजों का मीनिंग होता है, उसको जब ट्रांसलेट करके लाया जाता है, उसका मीनिंग जो रिचनेस है बहुत कम हो जाता है. तो फेलोशिप में मैं जाके बात किया, आप बताओ थ्योरी तो मुझे बनाना है कभी जाके, अगर ऐसे मैं अपने आप को ट्रेन कर पाया, बट मैं करूंगा कैसे, लाइक कैसे ये फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस आप कैसे डील करोगे, कैसे ये जो इनसिक्योरिटीज है खुद के माइंड पे. हम हर टाइम बोलते हैं दलित का लिटरेचर दलित को ही लिखना चाहिए, बट उस जगह पे पहुंचना तो चाहिए ना जो अपना स्टोरी खुद की आइडेंटिटी खुद एक्सप्रेस कर पाए. वो फेलोशिप ये मौका देता है. लाइक जैसे अम्बा ने बोला, लाइक आइडेंटिटी कैसे उनका प्रैक्टिस में धीरे धीरे मोर मीनिंगफुली आने लगा, तो वो भी मुझे मौका मिला. और जैसे हमारा क्या है, क्लास के बाद विल हैव कॉन्वर्सेशन विद फैकल्टी, उसको हम ऑफिस आवर बोलते हैं. तो उस दौरान हम बात कर सकते हैं, जैसे कुछ चैलेंजेस फेस कर रहे हैं कोर्स के दौरान, या कुछ इश्यूज हो रहे हैं जो कोई करना चाहता है अपना पर्टिकुलर फील्ड में. हो सकता है ये आर्किटेक्ट जो है उसका प्रैक्टिस रिलेटेड हो सकता है, सोशल साइंस वाले का अपना प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है. तो वो कोर्स वर्क के बाहर भी मौका मिला. जैसे मैं अपना पर्टिकुलर एस्पेक्ट में मैं स्ट्रगल कर रहा था, लाइक मैं तो हूँ गांव से, फिर मैं शहर को लेके इतना परेशान क्यों हूँ, क्या फायदा है शहर को पढ़ के, मैं कौन हूँ शहर को पढ़ने वाला. बिकॉज मेरे दिमाग में हर टाइम क्वेश्चन आता है लाइक हु एम आई टू डू सर्टेन थिंग्स. तो हु क्वेश्चन पहले आता है. तो उस दौरान इंट्रोडक्शन के दौरान मौका मिला मुझे लाइक टू लोकेट माई सेल्फ, लोकेट माई एक्सपीरियंस, माई ट्रेजेक्टरीज, माई आइडेंटिटीज इन माई लार्जर प्रैक्टिस, इन माई रिसर्च, इन माई थिंकिंग. तो ये 2-3 था जो मुझे बहुत अभी भी बहुत हेल्पफुल लगता है. लाइक अभी भी जो प्रैक्टिका का दौरान जो अप्रोच था, लाइक हम लोग ऐसे ट्रेन हुए क्वेश्चन करके ही आंसर मिलता है. तो सडनली अगर आपको कोई बोले आप बिना क्वेश्चन लेके फील्ड में जाओ और देख के आओ और पता करो हो क्या रहा है, तो शुरू में बहुत स्ट्रगलिंग था. लाइक हम कोई भी चीज देखते हैं कुछ लेवल लगा देते हैं, ये तो ओके ये इनफॉर्मलिटी है, ये एक्स है, वाई है, जेड है. तो ये जब हो गया सबका प्रैक्टिस बहुत ओपन अप हो गया. लाइक हम देख के लेवलिंग करने की वजह हम सुनने लगे, उसको हम समझने लगे. वी रियली वांट टू गेट इनटू द डिटेल ऑफ पर्टिकुलर थिंग. तो वो भी एक चीज है जो आज मेरा प्रैक्टिस को बहुत इन्फॉर्म करता है. शुरू में ही लेवल ना करके, शुरू में ही जजमेंटल ना होके, यू लिसन टू दैट पर्टिकुलर थिंग, you observe, you try to understand the nitty gritty of particular thing. तो ये 2-3 चीज था जो मेरे को अभी भी बहुत हेल्पफुल लगता है. एंड आई कैन रीच आउट टू दिस गाइज अनुजा एंड अम्बा एंड लाइक कोई ऐसा लिमिटेशन नहीं है 18-19 का बैच है तो उसके बाहर बात नहीं हो सकता है, कोर्स खत्म फैकल्टी भी कांटेक्ट बंद हो गया, ऐसा नहीं है. आई कैन रीच आउट टू एनीबॉडी एट एनी टाइम. तो दैट इज ऑल्सो अनदर अपॉर्चुनिटी जो दिख रहा है. जो लोग एप्लीकेशन के लिए सोच रहे हैं, बहुत इनसिक्योरिटीज है. जैसे कुछ लोग होंगे जो लाइक मेट्रो सिटी से है नहीं, बट उनको लग रहा है यार एसओपी में क्या लिखे, ये स्टेटमेंट ऑफ पर्पस है या ये स्टेटमेंट ऑफ और कुछ है, लाइक कैसे लिखे. तो मैं उनको बोलना चाहता हूँ आप ज्यादा इसमें इनसिक्योर होने का जरूरत नहीं है। आप खुद को लिखिए, लाइक हु यू आर एंड यू नो हाउ यू बिकम एंगेज विद अर्बन। आपका इनसिक्योरिटीज क्या है, आपका फ्रस्ट्रेशंस क्या है, आपका प्रॉब्लम क्या है, आप अर्बन से जुड़े कैसे, उस अर्बन में आप कौन सा चीज एक्सप्लोर करना चाहते हो, ये बहुत जरूरी है। ऐसा नहीं, बहुत लोग मुझे आप पहले भी बोलते थे अरे यार आपका खुद का एप्लीकेशन भेज दो, ऐसा कुछ सैंपल मिल जाए। आप ऐसा बिल्कुल ना कीजिए, लाइक आप खुद का एक्सपीरियंस लिखिए, खुद का जर्नी, खुद का ट्रेजेक्टरी, आप खुद का जो, ऐसा बोलने का बिल्कुल जरूरी नहीं कितने परसेंट इंडिया का अर्बन है, वो सबको पता है आईएचएस में, वो अर्बन ही पढ़ा रहे, तो वो सब फैक्ट देके जो ओल्ड स्ट्रक्चर है उसके बाहर जाके आप एसओपी को पर्सनल बनाइए, जो वो अपना है, एक खुद का है, जो आपने आपको बोलना चाहते हैं, लाइक अर्बन का इस पार्ट में मैं हूँ, इसलिए मैं हूँ, इससे मैं जुड़ा होना चाहता हूँ आगे जाके। एक था। और दूसरा था, कुछ दोस्त मैं मुझे फोन करता है यार मैं तो ना बड़ा बड़ा यूनिवर्सिटी से हूँ नहीं, ना मेरे पास वर्क सैंपल है, तो कैसे करेंगे। तो मैं उनको भी बोलना चाहता हूँ, लाइक आप ऐसे मत सोचिए आपके पास सैंपल नहीं है, बहुत टाइम है। आप 2 पेज का भी कुछ लिखिए, कुछ फोटोग्राफ्स हो, या आपने कुछ टीम में काम किए थे उसका कुछ आउटपुट है, जो आप एज ए आपका यू नो खुद का वो एक्सपीरियंस से आया है, कुछ पर्टिकुलर चीज आपका लाइफ से जुड़ा हुआ कुछ पर्टिकुलर चीज है, तो उसको आप लिखिए 2 पेज। एक फोटोग्राफ का भी एक्सप्लेनेशन हो सकता है, एक छोटा सा फैक्ट का भी इलेबोरेशन हो सकता है, तो आप उसको भी जरूर ऐसे कंसीडर कर सकते हैं। जी वर्क सैंपल मतलब लोग समझते हैं या तो आर्किटेक्ट के लिए कुछ भी हो सकता है, जो उसका 5 ईयर कोर्स के पोर्टफोलियो टाइप जो बोलते हैं, आई थिंक अम्बा बेटर वर्ड यूज कर सकते हैं, क्या बोलते हैं उसको, या हम सोशल साइंस में या अदर सब्जेक्ट में सोचते हैं यार कुछ आर्टिकल होना चाहिए। ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है, कुछ पर्टिकुलर फिनोमेना को लेके आपका जो एक्सपीरियंस है, आपका जो ओपिनियन है, आपका जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, आपका जो वे ऑफ लुकिंग पर्टिकुलर थिंग्स है, उसी को आप लिख सकते हैं, उसको एज ए सैंपल सबमिट कर सकते हैं। और फाइनेंस के बारे में मैं और एक चीज बोलना चाहता था, क्योंकि बहुत लोग होंगे जो सोचता है यार फाइनेंस कहाँ से आएगा, हम कुछ करने से पहले जरूरी है हम सरवाइव कैसे करेंगे, फिर तो वो होगा ना, खाना अगर जाएगा तभी जाके ये सब इंटेलेक्चुअल चीजें होंगे। तो उसके लिए मैं बोलना चाहूंगा, लाइक मैं खुद ही अगर आईएचएस मुझे मौका नहीं देता, लाइक फ्रॉम रेसिडेंशियल से लेके ट्रांसपोर्ट से लेके कोर्स का मतलब जो भी फीस है, और ये फुल्ली फंडेड होता है जो नीडेड है, जिनको चाहिए। और एक चीज लाइक सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग मुझे जो लगता है एप्लीकेशन जब इवेल्यूएट किया जाता है इसको कंसीडर नहीं करते लोग, जब जो फैकल्टी इवेल्यूएट करता है या इसको फाइनेंस का जरूरत है कि नहीं, आप सिलेक्ट होने के बाद उसको सोचा जाता है ओके नाउ दिस मेनी पीपल रिक्वायर दिस फाइनेंशियल हेल्प। तो यही मुझे बोलना था, लाइक बहुत लोग होंगे, मैं तो चाहूंगा ये दिल्ली बॉम्बे बेंगलोर के बाहर जो लोग अर्बन से जुड़ा हुआ चाहते हैं, जो सोचता है यार हमारा शहर तो अलग वे में बदल रहा है, हमारा शहर में ये था ये हो रहा है, शहर का जो प्रोसेस है हमें तो कुछ अलग लगता है, हम उसको कैसे करें, कौन मुझे प्लेटफॉर्म देगा ऐसा अपना ऑब्जर्वेशन जर्नी एक्सपीरियंस नॉलेज को लिखने में, बोलने में, ड्रॉ करने में, उसको वीडियो बनाने में। मैं उनको बोलना चाहता हूँ यही आपके लिए एक प्लेटफॉर्म है, कोई डिसिप्लिनरी बाउंड्री नहीं है, कोई इतने साल का वर्क एक्सपीरियंस चाहिए जो जॉब में ढूंढता है, वो भी बिल्कुल नहीं है। आप खुद आपका जो लाइफ है, आपका जो एक्सपीरियंस है, वो भी एक टेस्टिमनी है आपका, जो आई थिंक आज का जो डिस्कशन का भी एक पार्ट है। बाकी आई थिंक अनुजा और अम्बा ऐड कर सकते हैं इसमें।
I think there are several things that I would want to pick upon, but I think it was जो Malay ने बताया ना, the process of reflection, that is sort of a very key aspect of UFP. I'll get on to applications later, but एक चीज तो मुझे एकदम strike करी थी ना when Malay said कि why are you doing what you are doing? So it's the question of कि informal क्यों label कर दिया या कैसे label कर दिया. And it's not just about you questioning your peers, but I have faced it a lot of times when people would come me and ask very basic questions of architecture and I would have no answer to, because it makes you rethink your basics as well, and why certain things were labeled as planned, as unplanned, as formal, informal, legal, illegal. And that is like an insight to your own journey as well, and your discipline, and makes you more sort of, gives you a lot of strength about your discipline as well, as with urban. And in terms of reflection, I think it's, Malay said it completely true, ki you have to be honest. Like, you have to be as honest as you can in your application. You have to portray a sketch of yourself. Why are you coming here? What are your experiences? Have questions, curiosities. Like, if you don't know something, put it up front that I don't know this. So I think one of the incidents which is really funny, what happened was, when our batch was sitting together and we were all discussing in our interviews, all of us were laughing about the fact that we were asked certain questions, to which our reply was, I don't know. And it's completely okay to say I don't know, because you're not expected to know everything. You're coming here to learn. You're coming here to engage with different people. So be very honest. And one tip for architects, because a lot of architects apply, is, so there'll be a lot of portfolios, and though all of us have like the visual tools to make the portfolio very beautiful, very fancy, diagrams are in 3Ds are in, but again, the selection team or the faculty wants to know you. So it's always nicer to put up what, if it's a group project, what was your contribution. It's always nice to put up what you thought about the project. A lot of times it happens that when we see our work, we're like, okay, we could not translate the best that we could. Put that up front. What were the barriers? We felt barriers because of bylaws. We felt struggles or barriers because of our faculty, because the faculty is coming from a set perspective and you could not tackle with it, but you wanted to do things differently, or simply कि build form से ये successful हो ही नहीं पा रहा है, तो मैं और क्या कर सकती हूँ. So I wish I could have done that. I wish I could have put up a reflective section to it, that this is what I meant to do, and this is what actually happened. And a very funny incident, what happened with the midway through UFP, I was just skimming through my own portfolio, and somewhere I had written bridging socio-economic divide. And I was like, what is socio-economic? What does this term even mean, this Bari term as socio-economic? And how is my building bridging the divide? So it's nice to think about what you had also written earlier and put in that. It's sometimes nice to put up that caveat up front, so that the jury who's seeing you knows who you are and what you feel about the urban actually. So I think that would be my key tip for architects in their portfolios and sample of work.
I just like to take this ahead, and like Amba mentioned the word jury, and that was a new word I learned from my architect friends in the fellowship. And like similar to like knowing multiple terms like this from other disciplines. So Malay was from the geography field. We had Vivek from the political science field. We had multiple architects. We had somebody from a commerce background. We had an engineer. We had an artist. We had a sociologist. We had a designer. I came from an economics background. My roommate was a lawyer. And I think this is like, I don't know, I'm falling short of a word, but it's like mini LinkedIn in a classroom, and you get to live with them. Like you are like almost 24 hours you are with these people. You are learning about not only their experiences as a human, their experiences as a practitioner, whatever they are doing before or what they plan to do. You are part of their journeys of how they are thinking or learning from you and taking this ahead. And you are a student yourself in that moment, right? So if you can just imagine like all the different sources of learning that you get as part of this fellowship, like you have an amazing set of teachers. With them, of course, you have exposure in the classroom, and like I think you are definitely encouraged to ask questions. Like if you are seen, like grappling with something, don't keep it to yourself, and that's the expectation. Just put it out in the class, and if not the professor, before I think there will be 5 other people in your fellowship who will have their perspectives based on their understanding of their field, right? So, for example, there was this because we would all live together, like, and we would all discuss things that are happening in the like this whatever, like newspapers. We would randomly pick up news and discuss things like, what is the implication of this thing. And I think over time, all of us agreed that we've been able to read the newspapers better, right? Like, so you'll see a news headline that says something like FSI, whatever, goes up from 3 to 3.5. And it, like, as a lay person, I would have been like, okay, whatever, like, I don't know how is this going to impact my life, right? But when you, like, I think now after the fellowship, you are thinking of, like, there are so many layers that you can fill with just this one tagline, right? Like, what is going to happen to the number of people that are going to come here? What happens to the affordability of this area? How are transport systems going to be set up here? What does that again do to how people experience their city in that particular area? What happens to the overall ecology? What are the different planning norms? And as an economist, my first lens was always keep: is this a profit? Is like, what is the cost? Natural lens, and I think I stopped at that. Versus now, I think about, like, who is going to get displaced, who is going to govern this, like what are the different like boundaries and barriers each of these authorities is going to face. And you just realize that you've never known your city. So as much as it's about exploring the city, it's also exploring how you think about not just the city, even about like the world, in fact. Like, so for me, every lecture was like the brain really opening up. And I used to always wonder, Malay is asking this question. Why did I not think of it that way? Like, it feels very obvious when somebody asks it. And like with that 9-month training or 10 months now, I think like you just learn to put those different layers in the way you speak, the way you absorb information, and the way you even give out solutions, etc. So I think for me, the best part of the fellowship was just like networking, peer learning, and this exposure to so many different layers that now I can put into any different aspect. And in fact, like Malay spoke about identity, right? So that was the first thing we learned in the fellowship. And I was like, hey, I came here to study about urban. Like, what is identity? Like, it almost, in school you study value education and it feels like stupid at that moment because why are we doing this? But like, I think my first instinct was like, what does identity have to do with what I'm studying about the urban? And I think I was so wrong. Like, I'm just glad I only said it to a few friends. But I think like now in my current profession, right? Like, we give so much focus to taking a diversity, equity, inclusion lens to whatever sectors I'm working in, whether it's education, sanitation, water, health. I think everything I learned in my fellowship, I'm able to be like, hey, but there was this reading that said this. Let me go back to it. Or like Sukrit in the class spoke about this. Maybe I should just message him and check like what he thinks about this. Or I remember I was doing a sanitation project and we had a person called Abhishek in our batch who came from like a Swachh Bharat background, and I just reached out to him and I was like, Abhishek ji, need a download of the policies of sanitation. Like, so you just know the right people, you know the right way to think. So I think like, yeah, I think that was amazing. But Malay, I want to like Malay and actually Amba both, like what was your experience of settling in to the fellowship? Because initially when I came, right, people like I'm generally not a very well-read person. So I fall short of words when I'm expressing or I'm even thinking. And then when I saw my like all the other folks around, they were able to so beautifully, create a theory or talk about the city and like abstract things, right? And I was more like, but this is this in one line. So I always found that distinction, and I found my way was the better way. But I think, like, of course, over time, I realized that, I'm very stupid to think like that. And it really opened up, like, it opened me as a person on, like, there are all these different ways to absorb any particular thing. But I'm just curious on how you sort of settled in, or what were your experiences?
Can I go first?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Actually,
definitely.
because this is exactly my experience. Because I had so much of inertia of reading and writing, and the amount of reading that we would have to do, I would just sit and sweat about it and be like, ye to nahi ho sakta. Like, I can't do this. This is a lot. And people will be like, yeah, this is 1 hour. And I would be like, this is 3 hours for me. This is not a lot. And in the beginning of the fellowship itself, we were doing close reading. So, you even read between the lines, you understand what each word is saying. And it was very rich. It was very rich. And I felt really nice reading in that way and then coming up with questions. And I felt that close reading somewhere made my questions very rich. And that's how, even if sometimes they would say that skim through it, I would go back, take up parts and go and do a close read of it and then try and understand. And this was all going very good till the time we were told to write. Because once you have close read something, when you're writing, you are very careful about the words you pick. And so what people would write in an hour, I would just have a line to write about, because that thing then translated into my writing as well. What is your narrative? What is the narrative that you're putting up? So actually, the skill set also which UFP gives you, not just a conceptual or a theoretical or a grounded knowledge, is also writing is something which was very new to me, and I genuinely believe that I cannot write. But this entire process of reading, understanding, comprehending, and then writing, while it to me it took a long time, it is very sort of empowering as well, because the work that I do right now is a lot of writing, and it's important. I feel it's important because your work needs to be communicated, or you need to even you need to understand what the other person is writing, because that's how it works. Urban is not individual, urban is collective, urban is a network. Like you said, it's a network. So what is Sukrit doing versus what is Anuja doing is very important to know, and that comes a lot through reading and writing and keeping yourself updated with what is going on. Because at the end of the day, we also have to understand that 10 years from now, we'll come back to 2022 or 2020 and say, COVID ke time ye hua tha. So now, learning from that, this is what we need to do, or this is what we should take care of. So those kind of skill sets, I never imagined that I would gain out of UFP, but they've sort of helped me a very, very long way. And like you rightly said about networks. So one of my reason to coming to UFP was also build a network, because I was like, I need to know people to be able to do jobs which are hatke. So you need to know people who are hatke. And this, I'll be completely honest, I think with faculty, you also have to make a certain effort to build that relationship. And like you said, Anuja, you have to bring up your curiosities and questions. If there's something bothering you, go up to them and ask them. There are office hours. Besides office hours, there are a lot of platforms for informal conversations. And those sort of are very important to your enhanced experience of UFP. And the faculty is simply wonderful. They will just guide you through every bit of your insecurity or a problem, whether it's related to a subject or whether it's just generally, I am seeing certain pattern, but I don't understand why it's happening. So they will sit to you a lot of times. They would read you just a poem to make you understand just how beautiful things are. And that connection to me specifically stayed on after UFP. um, and it's not just the IIHS network. With IIHS, there are a lot more organizations that are connected. I personally worked with CPR and WPC during my project, and that's the way you start to get to know people as well, other people in the development sector and the areas of your interest. And then my internship only at Seva Bharat in the land rights vertical got converted into my job. And And during my first month of engagement, we were working on this campaign called the Main Delhi campaign. And there were a lot of like IIHS, there are 2 coordinators from IIHS, there are coordinators from Vigo, and other organizations as CPR coming in. At one point of time, I was like, "Arey, main to wapas aa gayi yahan par." I am back to UFP because so many of our mentors are here. But at the same time, then your vision also expands with them. Who you're learning from also expands, and it's a very sort of modern, progressive, practical approach that we need right now. We have to be updated with everyone's work. We have to contribute in the best of our abilities, and that comes with self-effort. This, I think I should also like make it clear. If you are lazing around, if you're not making that effort, it might not happen. But if you make that even a bit of an effort, you make, the faculty will respond so nicely that it becomes like a lifelong relationship, which I think all of us have right now. That as of now also, if we have any curiosities, doubts, so what am I doing with life again, we just write to them and then they get back. And this is exactly what had happened. COVID had come and I did not know where my work was going, and I was like, okay, I have this opportunity, but this is not my area of interest. What do I do? So they would give you a very honest perspective about I think your skill set or your way of thinking matches this. So sometimes it's okay to be in a space where it's not particularly your area of interest, but you can learn a lot about the urban. And eventually in life, when you come back to it, you'll see that it integrates or it injects in your work a lot. So rightly said, I think, Anuja, networking is something which is the USP of UFP, to crack a very lame joke.
Yeah, I think to add, to add Amba and Anuja's, this what we are discussing right now. So I think शुरू में थोड़ा फनी वे में मैं जब गया IIHS, लाइक हमारे दोस्तों में एक कहावत थी, लाइक इंडिया में नाम में क्या है, सब कुछ तो सरनेम में रखा है. तो लाइक व्हेन यू गो थ्रू द लिस्ट, लाइक मैं थोड़ा डर गया देख के, भाई ये लोगों के बीच में ऐसा ऐसा डिजिग्नेशन, मैं क्या करूंगा जाके उधर, मैं तो कहाँ जियोग्राफी पढ़ने वाला एक फील्ड से हूँ. तो जब गया शुरू में मेरे दिमाग में था, भाई जो भी हो रहा है तो स्पेस के ऊपर ही हो रहा है, थोड़ा बहुत तो नॉलेज है स्पेस का, तो कुछ ना कुछ कर ही लेंगे. तो शुरू का यही थिंकिंग था शुरू में, लाइक देन यू गो, यू टॉक विद देम एंड देन यू रियलाइज अरे सब तो एक डिफरेंट लाइफ एक्सपीरियंस से आ रहा है, डिसिप्लिनरी बैकग्राउंड से, बट सबका लाइक फोकस पॉइंट एक ही था, लाइक एवरीबॉडी इज लुकिंग एट द अर्बन. तो वो जो इंटरमिक्सिंग हुआ, जो आई थिंक लेंस का जो बदलाव आया, लाइक एक पर्टिकुलर लेंस के दिखने वजह से लाइक यू लुक सर्टेन थिंग्स, तो उसमें जब अलग अलग लेंस ऐड होने लगा तो माय पर्सपेक्टिव चेंज. और 2 चीजें आई थिंक मेरे अंदर मेरा अप्रोच में जो चेंज हुआ, एक था लाइक जो यूनिवर्सिटी सिस्टम्स है इज डिजाइन अराउंड डिसिप्लिन, बट अभी जो मार्केट है और जो वर्ल्ड फंक्शन करता है ये सेक्टर में फंक्शन करता है. तो ये जो ट्रांजिशन था डिसिप्लिन टू सेक्टर, ये एक मेरे लिए थोड़ा स्ट्रगलिंग था एंड इज ऑल्सो ए अपॉर्चुनिटी, बिकॉज जब कोई प्रोजेक्ट कर रहा है या किसी को पढ़ा रहा है या कोई भी एक आर्ट फॉर्म के साथ जुड़ा हुआ है, वो प्रॉब्लम उसको नहीं पूछेगा तुम कौन सा डिसिप्लिन से आए हो. तो दैट इज दिस ट्रांजिशन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. आई थिंक मेरे लिए वो बहुत हेल्पफुल भी था. और ऊपर से क्या था, ऑलरेडी बहुत लोग ऐसे थे जो ट्रांजिशन कर चुके थे, तो उनका जो वर्क एक्सपीरियंस था, जो डिसिप्लिन से ऑलरेडी सेक्टर में आ गए थे, दैट इज ऑल्सो इनकॉर्पोरेटेड लाइक इन माई लर्निंग. तो ये एक एस्पेक्ट था. और जो दूसरा एस्पेक्ट जो मैं शुरू से बोल रहा था, लाइक मेरा इंटरेस्ट थ्योरी था, मेरा इंटरेस्ट रिसर्च था, तो मैं अपना क्वेश्चन जो पूछता था शुरू में जब फेलोशिप में गया, लाइक दैट क्वेश्चन चेंज ओवर द टाइम. वो बहुत फैसिनेटिंग था क्योंकि मैं क्वेश्चंस को लिख के रखता था. 2018 में शुरू में ज्वाइन किया था, ये क्वेश्चंस था मेरा जो रिसर्च क्वेश्चन होने वाला था पीएचडी का. वो जो बदला, उसमें जो बदलाव आया, जो इनपुट्स आए उसकी वजह से जो चेंज आया, वो बहुत फैसिनेटिंग था. उसका जो उससे एक चीज बहुत मतलब मेरे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट था, लाइक जो भी हम पढ़ते हैं ये फिनिश प्रोडक्ट है, इसके पीछे का कहानी, जो पीछे का प्रोसेस है, नोबडी इज टॉकिंग अबाउट इट. ये मूवी नहीं है जो कोई डायरेक्टर बैठ के इंटरव्यू दे रहा है, ऐसे ऐसे स्टेजेस है, ऐसे ऐसे करके हुआ था। तो वो जो डाइसेक्ट हुआ, जो फाइनल प्रोडक्ट पढ़ते थे, उसका पीछे का जो प्रोसेस जब पता चला, तब धीरे धीरे लगने लगा ओके ये छोटा सा फोकस करते, इसको पहले सीखते। जैसे मेरे केस में अगर राइटिंग हो, वो एक क्वेश्चन पूछने से लेके उसको इवॉल्व होके उसको फील्ड में जाके कलेक्ट करके उसको लाके थ्योरी, एग्जिस्टिंग थ्योरी के साथ कनेक्ट करके जाके फाइनल प्रोडक्ट आता है, जो मैं पढ़ लेता था पहले। जब मैं पढ़ता था उसका पीछे का स्ट्रक्चर नहीं दिखता था, पीछे का गेम पता नहीं था, तो कोई भी डर जाता है यार यार ये कैसे मैं लिखूंगा, ये तो मेरे मतलब रीच के बाहर है। बट जब डाइसेक्ट हो जाता है चीजें, जो पढ़ने का, चाहे न्यूज़पेपर हो, कोई भी क्यों ना हो, उसका पीछे का अगर स्ट्रक्चर, जो इनविजिबल स्ट्रक्चर है उस कंटेंट को होल्ड करके रखने के लिए, चाहे वो कोई भी ड्राइंग हो, राइटिंग हो, कोई भी वीडियोस हो, न्यूज़पेपर आर्टिकल हो, एनीथिंग, सब कोई भी क्रिएटिव एक आर्ट फॉर्म के पीछे जो स्ट्रक्चर है, वो मेरे लिए जानना बहुत जरूरी था। और फेलोशिप में जो अनुजा का क्वेश्चन था, जो सेटलिंग इन, तो ये दो सवाल पे मैं बहुत स्ट्रगल भी किया, लर्निंग भी हुआ, और कुछ चीजें सीख भी किया, और कुछ चीजें अभी भी सीख रहे हैं, जो डिसिप्लिन टू सेक्टर एंड फाइनल प्रोडक्ट टू लाइक टू प्रोसेस ऑफ क्रिएटिंग दैट प्रोडक्ट। ये जो दो चेंजेस है, इवन ये बहुत जरूरी भी है। लाइक वर्किंग फील्ड में जो ऑलरेडी काम कर रहे हैं, उनको लगेगा ये लोग तो इनका बिना एक्सपीरियंस में गया था, ऐसा हुआ था। बट जो लोग आए थे वर्क 5 साल 6 साल का काम करके, उनके लिए भी ये जो दो चेंज है, उनके लिए पूरा प्रोसेस उल्टा था। लाइक उनके केस में सेक्टर से फिर से वो डिसिप्लिन में आने लगा, धीरे धीरे रीलर्न करने लगा, कुछ कॉन्सेप्ट उसमें चेंज करने लगा उन लोगों में। एक चीज बात करने के टाइम पता चलते थे, और वो लोग भी अपना जो लर्निंग था, जो चीजें ऑलरेडी गैदर कर चुके थे, उसको भी उन्होंने एक आउटपुट फॉर्म में धीरे धीरे फॉरवर्ड बैकवर्ड जो मूवमेंट था, कुछ लोगों के लिए वो फॉरवर्ड हो रहा था, कुछ लोगों के लिए वो बैकवर्ड वाला मूवमेंट था। वो बहुत फैसिनेटिंग था। लाइक जो सेटलिंग होने में चैलेंजेस तो है, बट अगर उसको होल्ड कर पाए, दैट इज द लर्निंग। एंड वो आज के लिए नहीं, कोर्स हुआ खत्म, ये लाइक इस लर्निंग फॉर लाइफ टाइम। तो ये दो चीजें बहुत हेल्पफुल था। और अनुजा के लिए मेरा भी एक क्वेश्चन था। लाइक अनुजा कंसल्टेंसी बैकग्राउंड से पहले आए थे, तो अभी भी कंसल्टेंसी में है। व्हेन आई सी अनुजा, लाइक इतना वर्क प्रेशर, इतना कंसल्टेंसी में प्रेशर, बट एक चीज मैं जानना चाहता हूँ बहुत क्यूरियसली, और बहुत जो सुन रहे हैं उनके लिए भी बहुत हेल्पफुल होंगे। हाउ योर प्रैक्टिस चेंज, बिकॉज चलो रिसर्च में, प्रैक्टिस में इनका तो जो भी चेंज हुआ, अम्बा ने जैसे एक्सप्लेन किया, मैंने भी थोड़ा बहुत किया। अनुजा के केस में यू आर स्टिल इन सेम फील्ड, हाउ योर प्रैक्टिस इवॉल्व?
सो पहले जैसे बिजनेस कंसल्टिंग में थी, आई थिंक देयर आर टू एस्पेक्ट्स टू दैट, राइट? वन इज द वर्क इटसेल्फ एंड टू इज द कल्चर. Like generally business consulting में you have to work crazy hours. Like consulting as a field में only it expects you to give a lot of hours, and obviously like I was a starter there, but I think how that has changed to now is I think IIHS just gave me the confidence to be myself. So I don't go into office as a different person. I go how I am. I take my experiences to my team, and I'm proud and happy about whatever I bring to the table. I think that's the personal angle. I think like content wise, pehle business consulting is very, like, of course, like different sectors there's a nuance, but broadly the kind of cases I was doing was how can this Fortune 500 company increase their revenues, how can they reduce their cost, how can they increase their profit margins. And there are more often than not set structures, right? Like तुम्हें अगर revenue बढ़ाना है, which means तुम्हें अगर suppose profit बढ़ाना है, it means कि तुम्हें either revenue बढ़ाना है या cost कम करना है. Revenue बढ़ाना है मतलब either price को ऊपर करना है या quantity को बढ़ाना है. Cost को कुछ करना है, there are fixed costs, variable costs, you deep dive, you do a lot of analysis. I think the biggest change is like social sector में there is no one structure, right? Like तुम्हें अगर learning outcomes बढ़ाना है बच्चों का, that will be so different from one state to the other, from one kind of non-profit to another. And I think it's more of like, I've just learned to look at problems differently. I've learned to think about different aspects to a problem, right? Like, अगर तुम migrants के बच्चों के साथ काम कर रहे हो, what are the different aspects? You can't only think about one aspect. You can't only think about education. Unka housing will be equally important. So then when we are proposing a solution to the, say, a funder or a non-profit, like जिनका program हम बना रहे हैं, we tell them to think about all these aspects. I think for me, it's broadly like how the fellowships helped is, like I mentioned, one, like networks, because as a consultant, you are not expected to be a content expert. You just have to, know, like, there's a saying, right? Like, you either know everything or you know the people who know everything. I think I'm lucky in that way that I think I know the people who know everything.
And
So I
I'm
know who to reach out to.
glad you guys had that experience. And I'm so happy to take some time out today to engage with the audience and talk about your experience. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. And can you just,
Okay.
it's been an hour that we've been having this conversation. It doesn't feel like it. So I'd personally like to thank Malay, Kotal, Amba, Gupta, Anuja Kadam for taking your time out. And we're so proud that you are our alumni of the UFP program. And to the audience, if you have any questions or queries, write ufp.info@ihs.ac.in and we'll be happy to respond to that. So thank you guys for joining in. And if you want to make a closing statement, please, the floor is yours.
I can go
Yeah.
first. I think
Yes.
one, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and talk to some of the future fellows, like who knows where they'll turn up. But I think broadly what I wanted to end with is there is no ideal fellow, right? So there is no ideal fellowship application, there is no ideal fellow, and therefore there is no ideal trajectory that you should expect that after the fellowship, I'm also going to be like X, because all of us across the batches are different. We came with a lot of diversity, like diversity about our own practices, our incomes, our religions, our states, our parents, education, the disciplines we studied, and our own age and experience. So I think all of us started the fellowship at a different journey, and we left the fellowship at on a different level, right? And what we made from that start to the end is how much we wanted to take. So it's completely up to you on how much you want to take, and like all the resources, all the people, all the support's always going to be there. So all the best for your application. Be super creative, and really bring your full self to the fellowship and to the application firstly. So all the best.
Amba?
Yeah, I think Anuja very nicely summed it up. Same. I think that's just control C and V of whatever you said. But really, thank you so much for having us over and formally advocating for UFP, which we've been doing since a long while. And if anyone has any questions, just feel free to reach out. Anything related to application. Again, key is be honest, be you. That's what they want to see in the applications. And all the best.
Yeah. So मेरे को भी ज़्यादा कुछ ऐड नहीं करना है. Like all the ways to everyone who are applying for the fellowship. अपना जो भी लिखना है पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस और आपने आपको जो करना है आगे जाके यू कैन राइट अबाउट इट एंड फील फ्री टू रीच आउट टू आस इफ वी कैन हेल्प लिटिल वे इन योर एप्लीकेशन. और जो लोग सोच रहे थे, जैसे मैंने ऑलरेडी बताया फाइनेंस के बारे में, कैसे वो सरवाइव करेंगे वहाँ पर जाके, उसका वर्क सैंपल के बारे में, एसओपी के बारे में, डोंट वरी, राइट like what you know and who you are. That is very important, and don't bother about the finances, because if you selected, then if you needed the money, that IHS will provide that fellowship, that stipend. And all the best, and we'll be very happy to to know few of the fellows will be selected this year, and to meet them, to talk to them. And, I'm really happy to be part of this conversation, and thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time, and it's been great having this interaction with you. I'm sure it's sort of clarified a lot of doubts that a lot of prospective fellows had regarding this, and I hope that we'd meet again someday. So thank you for your time, and just to repeat that again, if anyone has any queries or questions, you can write to us at ufp.info@ihs.ac.in. So good night, take care, and have a good weekend.